What was Agnes Varda's Cleo 5-7 really about? Beauty? Life? Death? Feminism? There are many possibilities, and they all play a role in creating the masterpiece that is this movie. How does the audience make these assumptions? It's all visual. The symbolism and visual imagery that Varda displays in her film creates a world in which the messages of fear, health, and death jump out at the audience. This film, released in 1962, was influenced by the French New Wave style of cinema that was increasingly popular at the time. During this period in film, from 1959 to 1964, film critics such as Jean-Luc Godard and François Truffaut began making films themselves that rejected tradition in frustration with the style of French cinema in the 50s and 60s. Varda strays from the traditions of French cinema, which were largely formulaic, by making Cleo 5-7, a slice-of-life film in which characters tend to everyday activities with little to no jumps in time. The lack of goal-oriented protagonists who drift aimlessly or pass time carrying out mundane tasks allows more time and room for the director's messages and symbolism to be reinforced, as opposed to having an action-filled plot that moves quickly, possibly skipping over meetings and lessons. In New Wave films, the camera was very mobile, consistently panning and tracking across the screen. This also allows for more of the film's world to be shown and visual imagery to be presented and lingered on. Varda's use of symbols of death and lingering on the uncomfortable topics of lack of life or beauty is shocking and possibly jarring for audiences that were accustomed to the traditions of French cinema. Cleo 5-7 centers around Cleo Victoire, who awaits a diagnosis from her doctor, worried that her sickness may possibly be cancer. The film takes place in Cleo's life from the hours of 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., when she will eventually hear her doctor's diagnosis. Throughout the film, which is also the course of her afternoon, she is pictured dreadfully nervous and pessimistic about the news she is awaiting to hear, which Cleo presumes is a prognosis of death. Varda imitates Cleo's sense of impending doom and interferes using omens of death. If shot in a very different way, without dark, looming symbols, the tone of Cleo's day would look very different. The frequent symbolism of death creates a suspenseful tone that would allow the viewer to feel the same level of worry about Cleo's future that she does. However, the consistent diminishing of her sickness by other characters causes viewers to also doubt Cleo's dismay. The ending, in which Cleo really does end up being sick, challenges this trope, and there are many clues throughout the film that support this. In the opening scene of Cleo 5-7, Cleo is talking to a psychic who is reading her tarot cards. Immediately, we understand that Cleo takes this very seriously. Her nervousness is clear when the psychic pulls,
Vénus Astarté, c'est sur vous la maladie.
Cleo is stricken with sadness. Despite not yet receiving her results, Cleo has a predetermined understanding of her fate. Yet the psychic seems to dismiss her damning fortune.
C'est grave, n'est-ce pas? Oui, c'est grave, mais il ne faut rien exagérer. Tirez encore une carte.
Here begins the trope, an underlying theme of Cleo being characterized as the hysteric woman, as characters continue to undermine her presumed sickness.
Avec elle, c'est toujours drame et compagnie. Elle a pourtant ce qu'il faut pour être heureuse. Mais elle a besoin qu'on la protège, c'est une enfant.
This is also the first instance of an omen of death presented in the film, which is a preface for the rest of the film and conditions viewers to feel a sense of impending doom, much like how Cleo feels from this moment on.
Les cartes disent la mort, et moi j'ai vu le cancer. Elle est perdue.
After receiving this dark tarot reading, Cleo meets with a friend, upset. When she looks in the mirror, it splits in a crevice and subsequently splits her reflection, showing the internal turmoil she is having and symbolizing a crack in her livelihood. However, once again, her challenges are undermined and she is placed back into the hysterical woman category.
Vous vous faites des idées.
Another mirror presents itself later in the film and is outright labeled as an omen of death.
C'est un signe de mort. C'est horrible.
Il ne faut pas croire des choses pareilles. Casser un miroir, c'est comme casser une assiette, c'est rien.
Once again, she is dismissed. Symbols of death or illness are a constant throughout the film. Let's take a closer look. Cleo passes by a store sign reading "deuil," translating to mourning or grief in English. The addition of this store sign, large and clear in the background, noticed by the audience or overlooked, shows that Cleo is already mourning her own death. Another symbol blended into the mise-en-scène of this film is clocks, which are not outwardly lingered on, but are quite prevalent throughout. Let's look. The addition of these clocks that surround Cleo symbolize that her time is running out, which contributes to her anticipation of her eventual doom. The concept of time also falls in line with the structure of the film, that catalogs every minute and hour of Cleo's afternoon, which subliminally reminds the audience of the passage of time, leading to what may be Cleo's dark diagnosis. Notice that there are 13 chapters that structure the film, another superstitious omen of misfortune. The last symbol that is clearly placed along Cleo's afternoon to symbolize her illness is the man on the street swallowing frogs. Frogs are often omens of ugliness and death, and in this instance, they are not hiding in the background, but are placed in a public display in front of Cleo for her to face. This clearly upsets her, as the frogs that are now in the man's stomach symbolize the frog within Cleo. Her outright fear of the street performer parallels her fear of her own condition. Here, Varda externalizes Cleo's internal anguish and nauseating discomfort. By using omens of death, the mirror, general mise-en-scène, clocks, and frogs, Agnes Varda shapes Cleo's world in the hours of 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Varda surrounds Cleo with her very fear, which not only outwardly throws Cleo into more distress, but also subliminally imposes Cleo's worries onto the audience. Some viewers may not notice these symbols and omens, which makes the reveal of Cleo's diagnosis in the end somewhat surprising.
Elle aura un traitement un peu fatigant, mais je pense qu'après 2 mois de rayon, tout ira bien.
Through preconceived notions placed on women about their hysteria in medicine, the audience tends to dismiss Cleo's possible cancer, much like the characters around her.
Cléo est là?
Oui, elle est sur son lit.
Elle dort? Elle est souffrante?
Un peu, oui.
C'est grave? Penses-tu, c'est pour se faire cocoler? Eh ben, on va la soigner. Et en musique. Vous avez pas une blouse blanche?
In the end of Cleo 5 to 7, Varda attempts to subvert society's notions about women through validating Cleo's fears with her conversation with her doctor and implying with specific clues all along that something was wrong.